Philip is indeed a sweet kisser. I gave him my body and I was very patient, no rush. As our lips met more fully, the kiss deepened, a silent acknowledgement of the powerful, undeniable feelings that had been growing between us. In the days that followed, our physical intimacy grew, fueled by a mixture of longing and the constant, underlying fear of discovery. Stolen kisses in the dimly lit hallway, lingering embraces in the kitchen when we thought the other was occupied, hurried touches that spoke volumes in their brevity. The house, once a place of familiar routine, became the backdrop for our secret love affair. We would meet in the evenings after Philip had finished working, the soft glow of the lamps casting long shadows as we held each other close, whispering promises and sharing dreams that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Our lovemaking was often rushed, punctuated by the ever-present fear of Dido's imminent return. But in those stolen moments I felt a sense of being truly seen, truly desired, in a way that transcended my youth and inexperience. Philip's touch was tender, yet filled with a longing that mirrored my own. Hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, do well to subscribe and hit on notifications. To all my returning subscribers, thank you for always watching my videos. The silence Dido left behind was never truly empty. It hummed with the ghost of her vibrant energy, the lingering scent of her signature perfume, a faint echo of her laughter that seemed to cling to the very walls. Usually I found a strange comfort in this post-Dido quiet, a chance to finally hear my own thoughts above the usual cheerful chaos. But this time it felt different, charged with an undercurrent I couldn't quite decipher. My calculus textbook lay open on the coffee table, the intricate equations blurring into meaningless symbols as my gaze kept drifting towards the closed door of Philip's study. Philip, my stepfather of 5 years. A steady, reliable presence in our often turbulent household. He'd taught me how to change a tire with surprising patience, offered a calm voice of reason during my teenage dramas, and even managed to navigate Dido's whirlwind social calendar with a quiet grace. I'd always liked him, respected him. But lately, a subtle shift had occurred, a barely perceptible change in the way his eyes lingered on mine, the almost imperceptible warmth in his smile when he spoke to me. It started with small things easily dismissed. A hand brushing my back a fraction too long as he reached for a dish in the cupboard. A compliment on my new sweater that held a note of genuine appreciation I wasn't accustomed to. Offering to make me my specific blend of herbal tea without me even asking. These moments were fleeting, easily rationalized as the kindness of a considerate stepfather. But they were accumulating like tiny brushstrokes on a canvas I hadn't realized we were painting. This particular week, with Dido away on a conference in Geneva, the air felt especially thick with this unspoken awareness. I'd caught Philip watching me at breakfast that morning, a thoughtful, almost wistful expression on his face before he'd quickly averted his gaze. Now, as I feigned interest in vectors and derivatives, my ears were more attuned to the soft click of his study door than the rustle of the textbook pages. The low murmur of his conference call finally ceased, plunging the house into an even deeper stillness. My heart gave a nervous little flutter. I told myself it was just the pressure of exams, the oppressive silence amplifying my anxiety. A few minutes later, the soft click I'd been subconsciously waiting for finally came. Philip appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame, a tired but gentle smile gracing his lips. "Everything all right out here, Sharon?" His voice was a low rumble, a comforting sound that today seemed to vibrate with a different kind of energy. "Yeah, just wrestling with this calculus," I replied, pushing a stray strand of hair behind my ear. Our eyes met, and this time the connection felt different. There was a warmth in his gaze, an unspoken question that made my breath catch in my throat. He pushed himself off the doorframe and walked slowly towards the window, his hands tucked into the pockets of his chinos. "It's a beautiful afternoon," he murmured, almost to himself. "Too nice to be cooped up with numbers." I closed my textbook with a soft thud. "Tell me about it." "But these exams." He turned to face me, his eyes scanning my face with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "You'll do great, Sharon. You're so bright." The compliment was simple, something he'd said before. But the way he said it this time, the soft timbre of his voice, the lingering quality of his gaze, made it feel significant, almost intimate. He walked over to the sofa and sat down at the opposite end, a comfortable but noticeable closeness. The air between us thickened, charged with a silent awareness. I could feel the frantic beat of my own heart against my ribs. I knew I should say something, break the tension that had settled like a heavy blanket, but the words seemed trapped somewhere in my chest. "You know," Philip said quietly, breaking the silence, his gaze drifting around the sun-drenched room. "Your mother, she's remarkable. So driven, so focused." "She is," I agreed, a familiar mix of pride and something akin to longing. It was hard to articulate. I loved Dido fiercely, but her relentless ambition often left little room for the quieter corners of our lives. Philip nodded slowly, his gaze returning to me, a thoughtful expression on his face. "It can be a lot sometimes." I understood. I'd often felt like a satellite orbiting her bright, energetic planet, always present, but rarely the center of attention. "Yeah," I murmured, looking down at my hands, tracing the faint lines on my palm. He turned his body slightly, facing me more directly now, his eyes filled with a surprising tenderness. "And you're different, Sharon. You have a quiet strength, a depth that's really quite something." His words, spoken so softly, so sincerely, resonated deep within me, stirring something I hadn't known was dormant. I looked up at him, truly looked at him, and for the first time, I saw past the familiar role of stepfather. I saw the faint lines of weariness around his eyes, the subtle hint of a loneliness I'd never considered before. He wasn't just Dido's husband. He was a man, a person with his own unspoken needs and vulnerabilities. An unexpected wave of sympathy washed over me, a feeling I hadn't anticipated. And something else, something warmer, something that unfurled within me like a shy bloom. In that moment, sitting in the quiet, sun-drenched living room, with the unspoken words hanging heavy in the air, the carefully drawn lines between stepfather and stepdaughter began to blur. The house, usually a place of familiar comfort, felt like the stage for a drama neither of us had auditioned for. And as Philip's gaze lingered on mine, a silent question passing between us, I felt a dangerous, thrilling sense of possibility awaken within me. This wasn't just babysitting anymore. Something had shifted, and I had a sinking, exhilarating feeling that our quiet house was about to become a lot less quiet. He hadn't just seen the teenager I was. In that moment under his gaze, I felt a flicker of something more, something akin to a woman. The days that followed Dido's departure settled into a strange, almost dreamlike rhythm. Philip maintained a polite distance, yet the air between us remained charged, humming with the unspoken awareness that had ignited in the living room. Every shared glance felt weighted, every accidental brush of hands as we passed in the narrow hallway sent a jolt of unexpected electricity through me. I found myself paying more attention to my appearance, lingering a little longer in front of the mirror each morning, considering outfits with a newfound awareness of how they might look in his eyes. Philip, too, seemed subtly different. He'd linger in the kitchen while I made myself a snack, his gaze often resting on me for a moment longer than necessary. He'd offer to help with mundane tasks, his presence suddenly feeling less like a helpful gesture, and more like a deliberate seeking of proximity. One evening, he offered to help me with a particularly knotty physics problem. We were hunched over my textbook at the kitchen table, the only sounds the scratching of our pens and my occasional frustrated sigh. Philip's patience was remarkable, breaking down complex concepts into digestible pieces. At one point, as he leaned over to point out a crucial element in a diagram, his arm brushed against mine. It was a fleeting contact, innocent enough in isolation, but it sent a wave of unexpected heat through me. I glanced up, my heart hammering against my ribs, but his focus remained on the textbook. Yet I saw a faint flush creep up his neck, a subtle betraying sign that he'd felt it too. The incident left me flustered. My concentration wavered for the rest of the evening, my mind replaying the brief contact, the surprising warmth that had lingered on my skin. I retreated to my room early, claiming exhaustion, but in reality, I needed space to process the confusing swirl of emotions within me. The next afternoon, Philip suggested we watch a movie together in the living room. It was something we occasionally did when Dido was away, a casual way to pass the time. But today felt different. I found myself acutely aware of the small space between us on the sofa, a gap that felt both vast and intensely charged. The movie played on, a romantic comedy neither of us seemed particularly invested in. I could feel Philip's gaze on me intermittently, a soft, almost hesitant look that made my breath catch. Then, during a particularly poignant scene, I felt his hand tentatively touch mine on the armrest. It was a light, almost accidental contact, but neither of us pulled away. Our fingers lay side by side, not quite touching, but the unspoken invitation hung heavy in the air. My heart hammered in my chest. I glanced at Philip, and our eyes met in the dim light of the room. There was a vulnerability in his gaze, a longing that mirrored the confusing emotions churning within me. Slowly, hesitantly, I turned my hand over, my fingers brushing against his. He responded in kind, his fingers closing gently around mine. The simple act sent a wave of sensation through me, a mixture of nervousness and a strange, undeniable thrill. We sat like that for a long moment, hands clasped together, the movie forgotten, the silence in the room thick with unspoken words. Finally, Philip turned to me, his eyes searching mine. "Sharon," he began, his voice a low murmur thick with emotion. I shouldn't be feeling this." His honesty, the raw vulnerability in his voice, broke through the wall of confusion and guilt that had been building within me. I don't understand what's happening," I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. He squeezed my hand gently. "Neither do I. But being around you, Sharon, it's made me feel things I haven't felt in a long time." He looked away for a moment, a flicker of something akin to pain crossing his features. "Dido, she's busy. Always busy. And sometimes, I feel invisible." His words resonated with a strange echo within me. I knew it wasn't fair to Dido, but in that moment I couldn't deny the connection I felt with Philip, the way he seemed to see me, truly see me, in a way my own mother often didn't, lost as she was in the whirlwind of her own life. I turned to him fully, my other hand reaching out almost instinctively to touch his cheek. His skin was warm beneath my fingertips, a surprising contrast to the tremor I felt within myself. He closed his eyes for a fleeting moment, leaning almost imperceptibly into my touch. The air crackled with a forbidden energy. "You make me feel seen, Philip," I confessed, the words tumbling out in a rush, a dam finally breaking. Like I matter." He opened his eyes, his gaze locking with mine. There was a mixture of surprise and a dawning understanding in his expression. He lifted his own hand and gently cupped my face, his thumb tracing the curve of my cheekbone. "Sharon," he whispered again, his voice thick with emotion, You are so much more than you know." The moment hung between us, suspended in the dim light of the living room, charged with unspoken desires and the heavy weight of our complicated relationship. The accidental touch on the armrest had been a catalyst, unleashing a torrent of emotions that neither of us could ignore. We were treading on dangerous ground, a path fraught with potential heartbreak and betrayal. But in that moment, lost in the intensity of each other's gaze, the allure of the forbidden felt too strong to resist. A shared secret had been born in the quiet intimacy of our living room, a secret that promised to irrevocably alter the landscape of our lives. And in his eyes I wasn't just a child anymore. For the first time I felt the stirring of a woman within me, awakened by his unexpected gaze. With Dido still absent, the house transformed into our clandestine haven, a space where the unspoken desires that had simmered beneath the surface finally began to find tangible expression. The initial awkwardness that followed our hand-holding on the sofa dissolved into a tentative exploration of this strange, forbidden connection. Small touches became more frequent, lingering hugs that held a silent question, a hand resting on a shoulder a moment too long, charged with a meaning that went beyond familial affection. Philip started seeking me out, finding flimsy excuses to be near me. He'd linger in the kitchen while I made a cup of tea, his eyes following my movements with a newfound intensity. He'd offer to drive me to the library, even when it wasn't strictly necessary, the car rides becoming stolen moments of hushed conversation and furtive glances in the rearview mirror. I, in turn, found myself increasingly drawn to his presence, the familiar comfort of his company now laced with a thrilling, dangerous undercurrent of attraction. I noticed the small details about him that I'd previously overlooked, the way his brow furrowed in concentration, the subtle lines around his eyes that crinkled when he genuinely laughed, the faint, comforting scent of his aftershave that lingered in the air after he'd left a room. One rainy afternoon I found myself staring out the living room window, a melancholic sense of longing washing over me. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Philip's soft voice startled me. He was leaning against the doorframe, a gentle concern etched on his face. I turned, a small hesitant smile gracing my lips. "Just thinking." He walked over to me, stopping a comfortable but noticeable distance away. "It's a lot to process, isn't it?" I nodded, my gaze dropping to the rain-streaked glass. "It is. I never imagined anything like this could happen." "Me neither," he admitted quietly, his gaze earnest. "But, Sharon, being with you, it feels right. In a way I haven't felt in a long time." His words sent a shiver down my spine, a mixture of fear and a strange sense of validation. "But it's wrong, Philip. It's my mother." The words felt like a lead weight in my mouth. A shadow crossed his face, the earlier tenderness replaced by a flicker of pain. "I know. The guilt. It's always there, a dull ache beneath everything. But when I'm with you, it fades just for a little while." He reached out and gently took my hand, his touch warm and surprisingly steady. "Sharon, you make me feel alive again. Like a man, not just a husband going through the motions." His vulnerability touched a deep chord within me. I knew he cared for Dido in his own way, but I also sensed a profound loneliness in him, a yearning for a connection that my mother, in her constant pursuit of success, seemed to have inadvertently neglected. Over the next few days our connection deepened, becoming a fragile, precious secret we guarded within the walls of our home. We found ourselves drawn to each other in the quiet moments, the stolen glances across the dinner table, the lingering touch as we passed in the hallway, each interaction charged with an unspoken intimacy. One evening, Philip suggested we watch a movie in his study. It was a smaller, more private space than the living room, filled with the comforting scent of old books and leather. As we sat side by side on the small, worn sofa, the atmosphere felt different, more intimate, more charged with possibility. Halfway through the film, Philip turned to me, his eyes filled with a tenderness that made my heart ache with a bittersweet longing. "Sharon," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, his gaze searching mine. I can't deny what I feel for you." I reached out almost instinctively and gently touched his cheek, my fingertips tracing the rough texture of his stubble. "And I feel it too, Philip." The confession hung in the air between us, a fragile bridge across the chasm of our forbidden desire. He leaned in, his breath warm against my ear. "I've wanted to do this for so long," he murmured, his voice husky. His lips brushed against mine, a feather-light touch that sent a jolt of electricity through my entire being. It was a hesitant kiss at first, a gentle exploration, a silent testing of boundaries. But as our lips met more fully, the kiss deepened, a silent acknowledgement of the powerful, undeniable feelings that had been growing between us. In the days that followed, our physical intimacy grew, fueled by a mixture of longing and the constant underlying fear of discovery. Stolen kisses in the dimly lit hallway, lingering embraces in the kitchen when we thought the other was occupied, hurried touches that spoke volumes in their brevity. The house, once a place of familiar routine, became the backdrop for our secret love affair. We would meet in the evenings after Philip had finished working, the soft glow of the lamps casting long shadows as we held each other close, whispering promises and sharing dreams that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Our lovemaking was often rushed, punctuated by the ever-present fear of Dido's imminent return. But in those stolen moments, I felt a sense of being truly seen, truly desired, in a way that transcended my youth and inexperience. Philip's touch was tender, yet filled with a longing that mirrored my own. He would hold me close, whispering words of affection that made me feel like the most beautiful, most desired woman in the world. And in turn, I offered him a tenderness, an emotional intimacy, that seemed to have been missing from his life, a quiet understanding that bloomed in the secret spaces we carved out for ourselves. We were painting the walls of this house with our love in Dido's absence, each stolen moment, each whispered promise, a new layer on a canvas of forbidden desire. But beneath the intoxicating surface of our passion, a sense of unease began to fester, a quiet counterpoint to the symphony of our secret moments. The knowledge of our betrayal hung heavy in the air, an invisible presence in every room, a constant reminder of the precariousness of our situation. We both knew with a certainty that chilled us despite the heat of our embraces, that our fragile world couldn't last forever. Dido would eventually return, and the delicate structure of our stolen happiness would inevitably come crashing down, leaving behind only the wreckage of our indiscretion. Yet, lost in the intensity of our feelings, we found ourselves unable to pull away, clinging to these stolen moments of connection like desperate swimmers in a turbulent sea. The quiet house held our secret close, but the walls, I knew with a growing sense of dread, always had ears. The final days of Dido's absence were steeped in a bittersweet melancholy. Each stolen moment with Philip felt both intensely precious and laced with a sharp, almost unbearable awareness of its impending end. The easy intimacy we had cultivated in the quiet house began to fray at the edges, replaced by a nervous energy that neither of us could quite conceal. The stolen kisses became shorter, punctuated by anxious glances towards the front door. The whispered promises held a note of desperation, a silent plea for a future we both knew was unlikely. Philip and I navigated the daytime with a strained politeness, a carefully constructed facade of normalcy that felt increasingly brittle. We ate meals in near silence, our eyes rarely meeting, the weight of our secret a palpable presence at the table. The comfortable routines we had established felt suddenly foreign, tainted by the knowledge of what transpired in the hushed evenings. The day of Dido's scheduled return dawned gray and heavy, mirroring the leaden feeling in my chest. I found it impossible to focus on anything, my nerves stretched taut. Philip, too, was visibly on edge, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a restless energy. He paced the living room, stopping frequently to stare out the window, as if trying to will her arrival or perhaps delay it. We avoided each other for most of the day, the unspoken words of our affair creating a chasm between us, a silent testament to the impossibility of our situation. In the late afternoon, the familiar sound of Dido's car pulling into the driveway sent a jolt of pure panic through me. I heard the cheerful click of the car door, her bright, energetic voice calling out a greeting that echoed through the house like a death knell to our secret world. The carefully constructed illusion of our temporary reality began to shatter into a million tiny pieces. Dido breezed into the house, a whirlwind of enthusiastic chatter, and from Geneva. She hugged me tightly, her words tumbling out in a rush as she recounted anecdotes from her conference. Then she turned to Philip, her embrace warm and affectionate, the picture of a happy reunion. To an outsider, it would have seemed like the most natural thing in the world. But Philip and I exchanged a fleeting glance, a silent, loaded acknowledgement of the secret that lay like a cold stone between us. The evening unfolded in a blur of forced smiles and strained conversation. Dido, oblivious to the seismic shift that had occurred in her absence, regaled us with stories of her trip, her energy infectious yet somehow grating on my raw nerves. I found it agonizingly difficult to meet her eyes, the guilt a constant, churning knot in my stomach. Philip was unusually quiet, his gaze often drifting towards me with a complex mixture of longing, regret, and a profound sense of finality. Later that night, after Dido had finally succumbed to exhaustion and gone to bed, the rhythmic sound of her soft snoring filtering through the closed bedroom door, I found Philip in the living room. He was standing by the window, his silhouette a dark, solitary figure against the muted light of the garden. I hesitated in the doorway, the familiar comfort of his presence now tinged with an unbearable sadness. He turned as he heard my soft footsteps, his face etched with a deep weariness. "She's home," he said softly, the words hanging heavy in the air, a stark pronouncement of the end. I nodded, my throat tight with unshed tears. "It's over, isn't it?" The question was rhetorical. We both knew the answer. The fragile canvas of our stolen love, painted in the quiet hours of Dido's absence, was now exposed to the harsh light of reality, destined to be torn apart. The echo of Dido's returning footsteps had shattered the delicate illusion we had so carefully constructed, leaving behind only the bitter taste of what could never be, and the crushing weight of our betrayal. In the silence that followed his simple statement, the enormity of what we had done, and what we had lost settled upon us like a suffocating shroud. The house, once our secret sanctuary, now felt like a prison, each room a stark reminder of the love we had dared to paint on its walls, a masterpiece of indiscretion that would now have to be erased. Have you ever imagined yourself in this kind of situation? What did you do about it? Subscribe to this channel and hit on notifications for more interesting stories like this.